Thank you, Marnie. Um, uh, Unfortunately, that's the last method I'd like to discuss with you. Uh, Plebiscite and citizenship statuses. Um, you know the idea of areas of the social life. So plebiscite in the area of institution management, what was one of the most important in the whole Korczakian approach and whole Korczakian system. Um, uh, Before I start to explain you methods, I'd like to um, tell you that that method, plebiscite, is something about how to let people, uh, how to allow people to express their opinions about other people, and how to know what people think about me. Yes, it's something double-sided process. And uh, and why? That is the question. Why? Uh, and here is the next very important feature of the Korczak's approach. That he met so many needs, so many children's needs, which were, truly said, invisible for many who took care of children at his time. What do I mean? I'd like to illustrate it by words of Michael Ignatieff. Do you know? Michael, yeah. I was sure, but Michael Ignatieff, I don't know if you know, is now a rector of very prestigious Central European University in Budapest, in Hungary. Excuse me?
It was moved to Vienna.
Now, yes? Or
Got kicked out of
ah, yes, yes, yeah. But it's last month or something like this, yeah? Recently, yeah. And he wrote, it's a small book, it's very, very moving, very good. And he wrote about needs. If you ask me what my needs are, I will tell you that I need the chance to understand and be understood, to laugh and be laughed, to forgive and be forgiven, and the chance to create something which will outlast my life, and the chance to belong to a society whose purposes and commitments I share. Especially the last sentence is crucial to understanding of plebiscite. But also the last sentence of that quotation. But if you were to ask me what needs I have as natural, as opposed to a social being, I would quickly find myself restricted to those of my body. And that's the opposition. Natural needs were met by many, many people, yes, to feed, to clothe, to many things. But needs as a social being and as human beings, it's something more important, but also more difficult. So before I start, I'd like to I'd like to encourage you to feel like a kid in the orphan's home. I've chosen these photographs because there are so many people which seem to be lonely. Like that boy, maybe that, I don't know if it's a girl or educator, doesn't matter, it's really sad. Because especially if they were new, that's the question, who am I? A son, a daughter? Maybe I have no mother or father, maybe I have an uncle. I am Jew, but where, when, yes? It's so many questions around it, because they were poor Jewish children, poor, so many often abused, so many often very lonely and very uneducated. So who am I? And who am I in that particular institution, which is huge, which is complicated. So many people, so many children, so many adults, so many rules. It's really complicated. And that's why, that's the reason of the need to let them know about other people and let other people write to, or however. That's the new kids. And they have rights to doubts, questions, feelings, but they really probably, they don't know that they're right, yes? Examples. What do they think about me? I'm ashamed. I'm afraid. How does it work? What should I do? So many questions. Probably do you know that questions, yeah? These questions. But the old children, yes, children who were there before, also they have right to many doubts, questions, and feelings. Who is he, she? Is he dangerous for me? What is her or him story? And I like or I don't like her or him. If so, we have, I think, at least 3 alternatives. From the point of view, someone of responsible, I can hide it, yes, to forget about these needs, these questions, anything. Let it be, without any actions from my side, and to express it, or rather to make circumstances which allow them to express it. I think that only the third alternative is, how to put it, is connected with children's rights and human rights. That's why in orphans' home they invented a plebiscite. Okay, let's imagine that once a year, around October, which is not accidental term, around October, during the meals, in the presence of all children, they voted for children. We don't know exactly this procedure, but I think that it was something like this. I think it was impossible to vote for all children because there were too many. So let's imagine that we have 3 boxes with 3 names. Jacob, Esther, Hannah, for example. And all children had 3 cards, 3 pieces of papers with 0, plus, and minus. It means, of course, 0, he or she is indifferent to me. Plus, I like him or her. Minus, I don't like. And they just voted to, they put a proper card into box. And that's all. At the end of the day, the results of plebiscite was announced. So each of kids knew how many pluses, minuses, and zeros they had. And depends on it, they had also, it wasn't, the result wasn't only one criteria, but one of the most important. They were given also citizenship statuses. What kind of? They had 5, Troy said 6, at least 5, categories. A troublesome newcomer, someone who is in orphan's home more than 1 year, but he's still, unsure. I really, it's something like distance between me and him or her. an indifferent inhabitant, someone who is, yeah, rather indifferent. Maybe inhabitant, someone, he's okay, but not something, nothing something special. A companion, it's really good. A nice companion, it's pretty surely good. And once a year, probably also around October, there was also a king of children. So a kid who had, you know, the most pluses. So that was the hierarchy. As you know, October wasn't accidental term. Why? Because some of you knows it better than me. Because of Yom Kippur. Because just around, in autumn, just around October, sometimes November, because it's changing, yeah? It's Yom Kippur. That's the definition from the Britannica. And I've bolded important part, important from our point of view. So, yeah, that's the holiday when Jews seek to expiate their sins and achieve a reconciliation with God. But the purpose of this of Yom Kippur is to effect individual and collective purification by the practice of forgiveness of the sins of others and by sincere repentance for one's own sins against God. So, can you see similarity between two, I don't know, between this holiday and plebiscite? Plebiscite was, how to put it, like a non-religious form of being forgiveness, of individual and collective, maybe not purification, but it was something like, let them see what I have in my mind, something like this. So it was very conscious, and they made just a relation between religion and social culture, social norms. But we had also another types of plebiscites. That was probably the most thrilling plebiscite. When they had a new kid, after 1 month, there was a plebiscite around the new kid. And if the number of pluses was less than a number of minuses, he or she was endangered by being expelled. Because that was a voice of the group, a voice of the society. That was a warning for a new kid to improve her or his behavior. And it was really serious. They had also farewell plebiscite. Ira told about farewell plebiscite yesterday probably. Farewell plebiscite not only for children, but also for educators. Educators had only farewell plebiscite, not during their work in the orphans' home. What was really important, that confirmation of that status was possible only once a year. But degradation was possible during the year, especially for, as you can see, for bad behavior towards younger. Someone could be automatically degraded. Now I'd like to tell you something about consequences of the results of plebiscite. First of all, if you wanted to be a member of parliament of the orphans' home, it was also once a year. You must to be, how to put it, an object of the plebiscite. It was obligatory for all candidates to parliament of the orphans' home. Second thing, Court of Peace, as you know, the judge could be also only a kid after 1 year in the orphan's home. After he couldn't be a beginner, a beginner. And the third thing is to be a member of the Room of Silence. It sounds probably like from Harry Potter or something, I don't know. But what was the need? Orphan's home was so crowded and so noisy. And for Korczak was obvious that children should have a place, where they could have a rest, where they could do their homework, but not for 100 children. So for being a member of the Room of Silence, the kid had to have a good status in plebiscites. We don't know exactly which one, but probably an indifferent companion or above, not less. And but there was one day during the whole year in which all children from the orphan's home visited the Room of Silence. Why? Because there were 3 portraits. Do you recognize him? That's the, excuse me, is it? That's the, yes, Joseph Piłsudski, a chief of state between 2 wars. He passed away in 1935. Extremely important man, politician, whatever. Yeah. The second was, would you like to guess? A truck of politicians. Do you recognize him? That's the President of the United States, Herbert Hoover. But he wasn't here because he was a president, but he was, I have to read it, Director of the U.S. Food Administration and next American Relief Administration, which was the agenda or agency which was responsible for the help for the Central and East Europe after the First World War. And for Korczak, it was really, it's moving and funny at the same time, because there were descriptions of them, and we know the texts. And about Herbert Hoover was, he is here not because he sent us food or clothes or many things, but because he sent us also a football, which was really unknown at the time. So that was the explanation. And could you imagine that the third portrait, we don't know, is the portrait of Esther Weintraub. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't a chief of anything. She was one of pupil from the orphan's home. She was graduated, I don't remember exactly, but probably at the beginning of the First World War. She moved to Switzerland because she had a job there. But when she realized the situation in the orphan's home is really bad, and that, diseases, and it's very dangerous, she came back and she took care of children. And she was infected by typhus, and she passed away. And she passed away in February, I don't remember the day, 1918, and the day when, all children from orphans' home visited the Room of Silence was the day of anniversary of her death. So that's the story. And could you imagine how powerful is that example for children in the orphan's home? To, to make the role with Piłsudski, Hoover, and Esther Weintraub. That was, I think, extremely powerful experience. Another example, and it's also connected with Canada. That boy under the dot, his original name was Beryl, probably, never mind, Beryl. Later, he was known as Leon, just Leon. Yeah? Yes, that's the Beryl Glusman. And he was one of pupils from orphans' home. He moved to Canada in 1930. He was, I think, maybe 16. He was 16 or something like this. He was a young boy, really young boy. And he was one of the 1,600 something Jewish people who were moved to Canada that year. You can read about him in the book by Olga Medvedevna too, May Their Lot Be Lighter. It's accessible in the internet on website, you know that website, Janusz Korczak Association of Canada, of course. So you can find that book there. And with postcards too. And Leon Glusman was given by postcard, you know. That's the description of this procedure of the farewell plebiscite. So he collected 100 pluses and only 4 minuses and 16 zero. And that's the postcard, Forget-Me-Nots farewell postcard. That's the, you know, number of votes. And that is the photo from the site of one of the most important tax planning and accounting firm in Ottawa. It's GGFL, Ginsberg, Glusman, Fage and Leeds. Ginsberg and Glusman established their own firm in 1946, and now GGFL is one of the, it's from the top 10 firms in Ottawa. Do you recognize Leon Glusman? He? Yes, it's him. That's the Leon Glusman. Here and here. He passed away in 2012, 7 years ago. And the last thing, words of Maria Falska, who was the director of our home. It was an orphanage for Polish children, and Korczak was also a co-director of that orphanage between 1919 and 1935. That's her words about plebiscite. I think for me the most important is qualifications of citizenship teach us to the ability to climb any difficulty step by step towards the top. That's the quotation also from Olga's Medvedeva Natu book. I think plebiscite and court of peers are probably the most controversial methods of Korczak, but I think that in this whole system it played a really important role, and for children, not for all I'm sure, but for children it was also a powerful tool for improving their lives. And that's also my farewell postcards, because it's my last activity here. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you one day in the future. And thank you, and if you have any question, please. Thank you.
Questions? Okay. So
So
Jane, yeah?
if a child got more minuses than pluses, then what? How were they helped, you know? Or, I mean, I'm assuming he didn't just.
Yes, we
throw
can
them to the
only
sharks.
imagine because we don't know exactly. That was the procedure only at the beginning. Yes, not later, not after the year, but only at the beginning. And probably there were some possibilities. One of them was someone like honorable mentor. So child like this could have someone who was someone like mentor. He or she helped him to improve his or her behavior and to gain more pluses than minuses. So that's the first thing I have in my mind. The second is maybe something like conversations, warnings, maybe bets also, maybe maybe to show many additional methods and encourage him or her to use it. For example, I don't know, some duties, I mean work for for the orphans and in the orphans home in many areas. We don't know also how many children, but I think not so many, were expelled because of this plebiscite. Yeah.
And do we know, you know, in a year or so, would there be another plebiscite and you could see that you did better, or?
Yeah, after, you mean after a year, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Judy?
Yeah, and my question was about how religious was the education in the orphanage?
That's the big question, because in fact it wasn't religious. And that was an issue for many parents, of course, because Korczak, okay, two areas, one religion and two cultural identity. So many parents, you know, were angry because Korczak too much acculturated or something, yes, assimilated their children. But it doesn't mean that the religion wasn't present in the orphanage home, because it was. For Korczak, it was very important, extremely important, to give children an opportunity to pray. For him, it was obvious that it's one of the needs. Yes, it's a spiritual need, and it's funny. No, it's not funny, but depends on the point of view. Because in the Polish home was in Pruszków near the Warsaw between 1919 and 28. And they had a new building, yes, in 1928. And before that, Maria Falska and many other people consulted with Korczak, amongst other, also about a chapel, yes, for children. And she, as a director, refused, because she was an atheist, so much that, because she was in Ukraine during the revolution in Russia, and her husband and her daughter, probably, or son,
Her daughter.
Daughter, yes, were they passed away, and because of funeral was religious, she refused to to participate in.
She was an atheist, and she refused to go to the religious funeral
Exactly.
of her husband.
Yeah. So, and the legend or gossip was, in the Polish our home there is no chapel, because what? Because Korczak is Jewish. Yes, that was the gossip in Poland. So they, children in the orphans' home, they had opportunities to pray. Even they had an opportunity to have a special postcard for regular praying. So but from the from the point the organizational or institutional point of view, it wasn't a religious orphanage.
If I could though, they did celebrate Jewish holidays.
Yeah, sure.
Because my
Of
mother
course.
told me that
They did.
they never celebrate.
Oh.
My grandparents' family didn't celebrate Jewish holidays at home. They went to the orphanage and celebrated with the children there.
Yeah, that was very, very important part of their life. I mean,
Yeah, I was just wondering, when the new kid came, did they go through with him about all the rules and what was going to happen, or would they just let him?
like workshop or like training,
Yeah,
yes, or something
yeah,
like this.
yeah.
Okay, so let's imagine that you have all of the issues I've told you, that you can sit and listen about it in one day. It's impossible. No, it was like learning by doing. So it was a beauty of this honorable mentor not to teach him or her, but just to show many situations, many possibilities, many opportunities. That's the situation in which you can, for example, use a court of peers. And that's the situation when you can use bets. And that was the way. That's why being a beginner lasted a year, yes, because the whole system was really complicated. But after a year, all of them were experts of the orphan's home, indeed, because it's not accidental, because Korczak in a beautiful book, do you know When I Am Little Again? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love the book. He wrote there, we, meant children, we are experts of our lives. Yes, so...
If I may, do you remember that quote we were talking from Korczak, children are foreigners?
Mm-hmm.
So he treats them as foreigners, those who are newcomers to the asylum, to the orphanage. And for a year, they are foreigners, they need to adapt to a new life, new land, if you wish, new language, new customs. And after a year, you are not a foreigner anymore, you are part of us.
Can I just a little piece of information about Leon Guzman.
Yeah.
In 2007 or 8, I think, he provided the money in Ottawa for the Ottawa Children's Theatre to write a play about Korczak. And Hanna Moscovich wrote a play that's called The Children's Republic, which was originally written for the Ottawa Children's Theatre, so it had lots of parts for children. And it was an okay play. She then rewrote it, and it was 2 or 3 years ago, it was produced in Victoria for the first time. When she did it the second time, she wrote it through the eyes of the children. And it's a much better play. So that if you ever, it hasn't, I don't think it's been published yet, but it will be one of these days, and definitely worth looking at. It's really
That's
beautiful.
fascinating. Is it somewhere on YouTube or no?
No. I mean, she's a very well-known Canadian playwright, so you could always write to
I've
her.
heard her name, yeah.
It's
Wonderful,
the same title?
thank you.
Same title?
The Children's Republic, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And he funded it.
Great.
Thank you.